Welcome back, everybody. Next step, joining your two pieces together. So here is my lining, right side facing upwards. I now take my outer with right side facing downwards and I join the two together. So I put the outer on top of the inner. So I put the outer on top of the lining. First thing I do is line up the two center seams so that they're nestled on top of each other, and you can clip it just there at the center line there, right? And now you can possibly see why I told you to press your seams the same way, because when you nestle them together, right sides together, they're opposite. So these little flaps of the seam allowance will be opposite each other, and that'll make it so much easier and neater when you're done. Now what we're doing is we are going to go to the chin of your mask, and you're going to line up your lining and your outer right sides together and put a pin in there. Now go all the way around to the ends, join up the ends, up to you whether you put pins in here or not. Not pins, because you're not using pins, are you? And you put those right sides together and put a pin all the way around. So you're going to enclose the entire two layers in one long seam. So I'll show you that now. Start anywhere, it makes no difference. Start somewhere along a long edge if you prefer, and we are going to go all the way around all four sides of our face mask. So I'm going to do that for you quickly. Change your stitch length back if you haven't done so yet to 2 or 2.5. Make sure your right side is up. No, sorry. Make sure your lining is up and that your little welt pocket, you're stitching it down, all those little bits. So I'm going to go all the way around. When I get to the center, just make sure those little flaps of the seam allowance down the center front are nice and flat. Go all the way along the top edge. I am now at the side seam. Stop with your needle in the down position. Go all the way across the side where the earpiece is. Pivot again. I'm now doing the bottom edge of the face covering over the seam at the center, and just keep going until you get back to your original start point. Sometimes I find that if I use very different fabrics, like in this case, one stretches a lot more than the other, so I might not have them exactly on top of each other, but there's a lot of wiggle room in this pattern, so it doesn't really matter too much if one is slightly bigger than the other. And I just go a couple of stitches over the beginning of my starting stitches. So there you go. So now I've gone all the way around the entire mask. The same with any curve. So especially here along the nose and the chin, we just put a few snips in there, just so it folds over very nicely. And I repeat that on the chin section, which is not as curved, so it doesn't really need. If you have pinking shears and you like pinking shears, feel free to cut the edges off with the pinking shears. That'll work as well. And then on the corners of your mask, I want you to cut across the corner like that, because we want it to have a nice sharp point when we turn this the right way around. So we're just cutting off about 1 millimeter from the point you want to cut off, so that you have got a nice space to turn. So I've done that on this one, and I'm going to repeat that exercise on the bandana. The only difference on the bandana is the length that you actually have to go around, because of course it's a much larger face covering than the regular one. So pin it so that they ease the lining, which is slightly smaller. Remember, we cut it down. It's not an essential part, by the way, of this process. You do not have to cut your lining smaller. If you don't mind being able to every now and again see the bottom lining poking through on the sides, listen, it makes no difference. It's not going to change the functionality of your face mask in any way. So feel free to not cut or trim down your seam, your lining of your face mask. Right, I am going to now go all the way around the perimeter of this. Just as a note, this bandana is quite a large size. It tends to be on the large size. So if you're making it for a female, I would absolutely recommend you make it slightly shorter where the ears would be. So you can cut off at least 1 centimeter or 2 from the length. But there is another way of doing it, which I'll tell you about when we get there. So down at the top now, I've just gone over the nose seam. And I'm sewing down the outside edge, which is where the ear goes. Remember, needle down when you pivot. And for newbies, remember, put your presser foot down so you don't knot up the machine when you start to sew. Okey-doke. Coming back to the beginning, and I'm going to just run over the top of my starting stitches to make sure my seam doesn't come undone. And there, I'm done doing that. Repeat what we did for the regular mask. Trim off the 4 corners, leave 1 millimeter or so, and it'll give you a nice sharp point when you turn. And then especially on the bandana, you've got a much longer curve. In fact, you've got a convex and a concave curve, and you need to clip both of them. So you've got a bit more clipping to do if you've decided to make the beard / bandana face mask. Right, so we're getting there. I'm going to pause and come back to you in a second.